Welcome to Your Thoughts, Your Reality with Michael Cole, the podcast that shines a compassionate light on the journey of veterans battling through life's challenges. Michael is a dual elite certified neuroencoding specialist in coaching and keynote training presentations, dedicated to guiding military veterans as they navigate the intricate pathways of post-deployment life. Join him as we delve into the profound realm of neuroencoding science, empowering these brave individuals to conquer universal battles, procrastination, self-doubt, fear, and more. Together, let's uncover the strength within you to re-engage with families and society, forging a new path forward.
Hello, everybody. So super excited for today. We have Dennis Blocker. Dennis brings over 23 years of experience in emergency medicine, serving as a firefighter, EMS responder, and trauma team member at a level 1 trauma center. Throughout his career, he's witnessed the darkest moments of human life, and that's what we're going to talk about today, which is violence, tragedy, and deep suffering that most people never see. His experience didn't just stay on the job, though, right? They followed him home, and this is what this is all about. Shaping how he thought, felt, and viewed the world. And after losing friends to suicide and facing his own internal battles, Dennis began confronting what many people avoid. So today we are going to dive in deep with my friend Dennis here. Dennis, do you have anything else that you want to tell us about yourself?
Sure. Just a DoD kid, Department of Defense kid, Air Force brat. Was born into it. 1974. I'm a 74 model. And we moved to Iceland and Guam, and I think that really, being a military kid, you see you're all about service. Like, even I remember riding your bicycle on base. At the end of the day, when it's 5 o'clock, the flag goes down. Retreat. They call it retreat, but the flag goes down for the day at the headquarters. And right. When the flag goes down, they sound the retreat song. And I just remember hopping off my bicycle and all of us kids getting off swings, and everybody stands at attention, and you put your hand over your heart and you face towards the headquarters where the flag is coming down. Even if you can't see it, you face that direction. People pull over their cars, they get out of their cars. So that level of service was absolutely, something that I'm very thankful for, because that served me very well later in life when I would feel that call, which we'll get into later. But
absolutely. So if we can, let's talk about, what brought you into first responder type care or career, if you will.
Sure. I had been to Africa when I was 16, and I was injured really bad in the Congo. We were 3 days in the jungle. That kind of first planted a seed that medical is pretty important, because we didn't have any medical people with us. And I just had to tough it out. And then later in college in Oklahoma City, I was in class when Timothy McVeigh blew up the federal building. And I just, our building shook. And when the class was over, we went in the hallway, and they had pulled up a TV to the window. And remember, you must be mindful, this is before, for your listeners, this is before the internet. So, they had pulled up a TV, and you could see downtown. And this giant federal building looked like Godzilla had stepped on it. So just, seeing those newscasters looking at the TV, and just, I had never seen news people cry before. And they were saying, we need all medical people downtown now. Please, all medical people, please come downtown. And, a couple carloads of kids, students went downtown. And, they just were, it was like the school nurse and like prior service, this and that. And, they went downtown, and there I was, just standing there watching people go off. And that's when I first got that pull on my heart that I needed to help. And it really made an impact on me, and just how I felt deficient. Like, I felt like there was something missing. And so that following summer, my sister and I both went to OSU's EMS program, EMT program. And that was really awesome too, Mike, because all of our instructors were all firefighters Oklahoma City firefighters who had pulled the babies and the kids out of this rubble. And so there was no fun time. There was no messing around. There was no not taking it seriously. This was dead serious. And so that was imbued in us. And yeah, that's how I got into it.
Yeah, I mean, just listeners, I know I'm feeling it because I know you shared the story with me when we talked before, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. It's if you put yourself in that position, it it changes your life, right? As it did, right, Dennis? I mean, it
It's
literally
absolutely
changed your life.
changed
Yeah.
the course of my life. Yeah.
So I'm just curious. I mean, what was the feeling when you're seeing that kind of thing? And we're going to talk about that as well in the emergency services. But what was the feeling? I mean, how old were you?
Let's see, 20,
Okay,
19, 20.
20
Yeah.
kid,
Yeah.
and you do this, and it changed your life. And thank goodness it did, because you have an amazing story that really is impactful. When I talked to you, I was like, yeah, we definitely need you on the show. So what were some of the feelings at the time that was it just disbelief? Was it surreal? Was it just your body? Was it like just in shock?
Well, first of all, I was in Bible college. I was training to be a Christian missionary to Congo. So you already have that kind of
Mm,
mentality, and honestly, you have been sheltered a lot growing up in a Christian home. You aren't exposed to a lot of other things because I went to a Christian school. I went to Christian college. I mean, so there's a lot of darkness and things that I was never exposed to that maybe a lot of kids that grow up in various circumstances would see. So it was very shocking. And just I remember looking around at the other college students, and just your hands are covering your mouth, and no one's talking. And there was just this, and really it was almost as if like the birds weren't even outside, weren't even flying. They were just hunkered down, and it just complete and utter silence across the city. And I don't recall sound. I don't recall any of that. Just staring, and then going outside and seeing 2 carloads of our students heading downtown, and and then the reports coming in, and then you just can't believe that there is that level of evil there. And and then you just circumspectly, you're looking at yourself and you're wondering, what do I do with this information? And that's when I started feeling that pull that I needed to be somebody who, it reminds me of Mr. Rogers, that famous saying where his mom said, if something happens, just be calm and look for the helpers. There'll always be helpers. And that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be the helper that was going to, help and be there, and, try and help people with the situations that they.
I love it, man. So, and just so you know, I literally have chills right now. I mean, to be in that situation obviously propelled a beautiful thing, right? It propelled you into the life that you have, and will have, obviously. So let's talk about now, just really quickly, let's get us out of that space, shake it out a little bit, right? So what was it that do you think over the periods of time that kept you moving forward? Because here's the reality, right? We go through something like that, we have a choice, and we choose to move forward and help, or we choose to go in and be a victim. So what are some of the things, I want to bring the light into this, during that transition, what are some of the things that you thought or maybe just drew you forward?
Mike, really, it was that constant need to make a difference, to not be a bystander, to not be a rubbernecker, to not be someone just standing watching mayhem and chaos. But, and when we're doing EMT training, I didn't know if I had what it took. And that was what was more terrifying to me than almost anything was we all have the same information, but we're not all the same, because some people's DNA is different. And, you don't know if you have what it takes until you're there. And so you can't thump your chest and be proud of what you've done and all that, because really it comes down to what kind of DNA you have were given when you were formed in your mother's womb. And for me, it was terrifying because I was just fingers crossed, knocking on wood, like Lucky Charms in my pocket, hoping that when I went on my first call that I would have it. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that factor. And fortunately, on my calls in EMT training in school, when I was a student, going to these calls, when I stepped out of of course you're excited, the sirens and the lights, and they're bouncing off of bushes and trees, and the red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, and you pull up and you can step out and you hear that crunching of glass underneath your shoes. And for some reason, everything slowed down for me in those situations. And I was able to access the files of training. And some people were not able to do that. And even people that maybe scored higher on tests and this and that, when they would step out of the vehicle, they would go blank and they were unable to access the files. And it just so happened, and once again, it's not any pride factor at all. It's just, you don't know if you have it until you're there. I was fortunate that when I stepped out, everything slowed down and I got very clear. It just kind of made sense to me. And I was able to see danger signs and access the protocols and, treating people and handling situations.
Fantastic. So I'd even want to add in that there's aspects that are in your DNA or in your literal cells that are generational, right? I'd also say that and again, I'm going into mind work, right? So a lot of things get blocked out, they're generalized, they're deleted and distorted. That's what our mind does to save energy and protect us. So I'd also want to throw in that your experience, the emotional experience that you had, changed that and helped you to move forward where other people don't have the same why to move forward. And that could be with what you did, with what everybody does in life, if you will. When you have a strong enough why, because you know what you want, you always have to start with what you want, reinforce it with the why.
Very true.
It changes things. And I would strongly say that that's probably another one of the reasons why you stepped up instead of stepping back.
That's very true. And that's what's going to keep you going, because there were times when you look around and you're like, this is getting even crazier. But what keeps you there? And like we talked before, but it was, we had nurses that would clock in and an hour later clock out and go home, and they're tearful and apologetic. And we're like, no, this just means you're more sane than the rest of us. It's like, this is not a calm environment. There are psych patients lining the hallways screaming, and there are 70 people in the waiting room that are all angry, and the wait time is 24 hours, and there's 4 coming in by air, 2 by ground. And it's like, no, you're responding correctly.
Right. But you're human after all.
You're human after all, and you're going to be a great nurse somewhere else on some other, floor or ICU or whatever. But what was important, and to your point, was that before I got myself into all of those situations, I did have the strong foundation of why I was there, was that I wanted to make a difference. And when things got hard, and when the trauma room is full and you're having to move the IV carts out into the hallway to make more room for even more people that are coming, and you're having to push stretchers side by side so tight that there's nurses at the head of the bed that are going to be there for a couple hours, and there's nurses at the foot of the bed that are going to be there a couple hours, and they're literally tossing bags of IV fluid over patients and catching them and spiking them and starting them because there's no more room in the trauma room. So in those situations, what keeps you there and makes you come back for more later the following day is that it's who you are. It's in your DNA. You have to help. You have to be there. And what's crazy is that even in the darkness, and when you're battling some very dark stuff, even now, when I'm sitting at home and I see a call on, maybe there's a really good show on, and you'll see people responding. Even now, I'm like, oh man, to be there. Like I would love to be there right now, you know?
Yeah. And that's fantastic, Dennis, because I'm going to say this. Most people, when they've been through what you've been through, and again, you gave it a different definition, right? That's how you changed the outcome of it. But most people, they see that, whether it be veterans, they see a war, they see, a first responder sees that kind of thing. It takes them back in a negative way sometimes with trauma, right? And I know you went through trauma, and we're going to discuss that in just a second. So it's again a blessing that you gave the distinction and definition, I'd even say, of it being, I still want to help, instead of, oh my God, and moving backward, you're still leaning into it, which is phenomenal based on your story, brother. I'm just saying that now,
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
You know what? Self-growth is work.
Yeah, it is. It is work. It doesn't just happen.
No, it does not. So let's talk about more of the trauma for a minute, and then of course
Sure.
we're going to finish off with your resourcefulness to bring yourself out of it. Okay,
Sure.
so
Sure.
let's talk about feeling stuck, and let's do that. I mean, let's talk about real quick. Yeah, this is all organic. Obviously, I'm just coming up with stuff out of my head.
There's nothing off limits. I'm okay with anything you want to.
Yeah, perfect. So so let's go with talk about some of the trauma that you kind of went through, if you will.
Sure.
And then we're going to talk about how you came out of that. Again, we always want to show the darkness so people understand if they're there, right? And then, hey, what's your success story? So let's start with some of that trauma of actually in the medical services.
Sure. Well, there's the trauma, of course, of pulling up on murder scenes and car wrecks and things like that. But then there's also, in the emergency room, there is we used to say that at least in EMS, you get to drop them off and walk away.
Right. You
did your part and you walked away, right? Well, in an ER, you're dealing with it, right? You're for 12 hours. And so you have more opportunity to personalize people. And I hope that doesn't sound horrible, but that's also very dangerous. So there's this fine line you need to walk between empathy and compassion and performing tasks and jobs. And the danger is that when you get too empathetic, you put yourself in their shoes, and then you start thinking, how would I feel in that situation? You have no business doing that, right? I shouldn't go there, so to speak, but I still can provide amazing care and concern. So there's this very delicate balance between allowing yourself to go to these places and say, if I was there, how would I be feeling, and what would make me feel better in that situation? And then I do that to help them, the families, feel better. A lot of times we're more help to the families because their family member is passed or going to pass. And so you have to be mindful of that. So in particular, one of the things in being here in South Texas is that we are dealing with a lot of human trafficking and drug wars and border issues and immigration issues and, tractor trailers that have 50 people in the back that are abandoned alongside the road with no air conditioning. And, 40 some people are dead inside, and there's 10 survivors who survived by breathing out of tiny holes they found in various parts of the trailer. Those kinds of things, human trafficking, kidnapping, people that take other family members hostage and torture them, removing teeth and things like that from them and putting them in mason jars and showing them to the person that was short on drug money what will happen to them and their kids that go to such and such a school. So they're revealing that they know where their kids go to school. And, you're standing there as this person is, you're treating them, and they're, I would try to step out, and she just reached over and just dug her nails into my arm and just begged me not to leave her alone in the room. And you see that fear in her eyes and desperation. And you know, another part is that, you know, as a as a man and as a regarding, we talk a lot about DNA, but as a man, my instinct is to protect. So I wish that the guy was there so that I could do something about it, right? And it's not. So I'm more reactionary, and that's not a fun place for a man to be in. And then also, there's this tiny little human, you know, who maybe is, you know, just a couple years old, and they've been abused their whole life, and you don't see any light in their eyes, no joy. All you see is just this empty stare from someone who should be hopping around and excited and getting into everything, but they just lay there, you know. And you see that and you take that in. And the way I described what eventually ended up happening was to my family was that I felt like that my mom and dad had provided a guard around my heart, and that over time there was this entity who I later would call the dark passenger from the Dexter TV show. It seemed to fit how I felt about my darkness, but that would hold a rusty chisel and a small hammer, and it was a very small chisel and a small hammer. And every time I had dealt with something like that or saw it, it was like a small whack on that chisel against that guard of my heart. And over time, it just grew and grew, and then the guard was gone, and the darkness started coming in. And I, in particular, you know, in the emergency department, and this was a level 1 trauma center, so it's not, you know, it's not just a regular ER. We're actually getting the worst of the worst, and being here in South Texas, and we also get all the pediatric trauma. So you're automatically by default getting all the bad stuff that happens to children, and in various ways. Some of it just accidents, some of it very nefarious and evil. And so just day after day after day after day after day, 12 hours a day. And, you know, it gets to, if you're worth your salt, it's going to bother you, right? And,
Right.
and you know, it gets to be where you think that, is there any goodness out there? Is there any goodness out there? And you start to question a lot of things in your beliefs. And I love the word that you've used several times, Mike, as you said, the word stuck. And later when we talk about therapy, that was a key word that kept coming up from my counselor. But hopefully that answered.
It does. No, it does, absolutely. And you know, I caught myself actually applauding, and it wasn't because of the journey. Of course, I will applaud the journey because it made you again who you are now, right? But it was your description of the chisel and chiseling away at your heart until it, you know, there was nothing left. So wow, that I actually got a little emotional just hearing that story. So it's a lot, man.
Different,
right?
when you're there, when a child takes their last breath, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's worked so hard, and I specifically ran 3 flights of stairs up, sprinted down the long hallway to the blood bank, make a hole, and you're running, and your stethoscope is flying, and you grab it and you're holding it in your hands, and people are jumping out of your way as you're sprinting down the hallway to go to the blood bank because they're taking too long. And you grab it yourself and you go running sprinting down the hallway, people dodging again, and you're taking the steps 5 at a time down 3 flights of stairs to the bottom floor. And you run into the code room, and they're still doing CPR on these two little sisters that are 8 and 3 years old, both having CPR at the same time from a drunk driver who hit their minivan. And you hand off the blood, and your shoes are sticking in the blood as you walk, make suction sounds on the floor, and that heavy iron smell is in the air. And you know, the doctors, nobody wants to quit, you know, but there comes a point where the doctor looks up and makes that, as I describe it in this book that I would later write, the doctor makes that fateful turn of the head towards the clock, that old faithful clock that keeps on ticking. And says time of death, and then you divert your attention to the younger daughter and the younger sister, and they both pass side by side. And then thing that people don't think about, in EMS, you get to drop them off and you go back out with your stretcher and you clean off your stretcher, and you have a lot of trauma that you're dealing with there, just from what you saw at the house, and you're dealing with family who are screaming and destitute, and they're hopeless and they've lost hope. And that scream that you hear, you'll never forget when you hear that scream. And so they've dealt with all that. They clean it up. And then for their part, they have to act like nothing happened. Where we go? Right. Let's go. Right. Let's go have something to eat. And you got your dark humor, which kind of gets you by. Yeah. And then you've got the ER people now who've got it, but then in their experience, is they're receiving it, and they're desperately trying to save, in particular, these little girls. And then the time comes when you realize you're going to have to turn over to death. That death wins. And then, and a lot of people don't think about this, in the ER department, then we have to clean their bodies, because their families going to want to come and view them. So that means taking them to a private room, moving them off the stretchers, which are too bloody, wiping them down, cleaning the brains out of their hair and whatnot, and getting their bodies presentable. And sometimes that means going and grabbing your own brush from your locker and brushing these little girls' hair. And something that their mom and dad did night after night after night, after a bath and a shower and before school. And you're doing it for the very last time that they're going to have their hair brushed. And, those kinds of things really start, if you let it, will start to eat at you.
Yeah. I don't care how strong your why is, that'll still eat at you.
For sure.
So, yeah. And everybody I've talked to, the patterns are the same. The stories are different, of course, but it's the same. And especially children, right? It's harder. There's always the ones that stick with you. I've talked to a lot of EMS people and doctors and, again, veterans, all the stuff. And those are the ones that stick. And I know that scream that you talked about from my own life, it's
I'm sorry,
not something you want to hear, but you move forward at some point. You grieve, don't get me wrong. You do all those things, but you move forward. So let's talk about that if we can.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're okay, we're gonna run about 5 minutes over. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, let's do this. This is gonna help people. Let's keep going.
Absolutely. So let's go into what were some of the skills, some of the things that you did to move from the darkness. You saw the crack in the light.
Before we do that, Mike, can we talk really just very quickly about how it manifests, maybe?
Please.
In people. And so what happened to me was a loss of joy, a loss of wanting to hang out. I want people, and maybe their relatives that are listening, or people that are listening that have a relative, I want you to be able to see signs. Yeah. And one of those is that you no longer do things that you used to enjoy. Like I used to always go to the movies with friends and hang out at the movies. Used to enjoy going hiking and camping with friends and family. I no longer wanted to do that. I'd rather have just been alone all of a sudden, suddenly. Also, another big tell for me, Mike, was that my anger didn't match the setting. It was overblown, and it came out of seemingly nowhere, and it didn't match. In other words, if something was spilled, yelling and making a big deal about it, and possibly drying it angrily and tossing the towel, whereas any other time I would have known that everybody spills something and nothing, right? You just clean it up and then you manage it, and no problem. Okay, let's go. You know what I mean? It was just anger that didn't match the settings, and those were the big tells in my life. But anyway.
And thank you for bringing this up, Dennis. I think it's very important that people see the patterns, because if you don't see it yourself or your family members, sometimes you stay stuck in the suck, right? Sure. And the first thing is the realization that you're in the spin cycle, so that you can work yourself out of it. So truly thank you for bringing that up. I think it's absolutely vital that people hear that and know that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So if you can, now we've realized, this is perfect, you realized, hey, I'm stuck in the suck.
Mhm.
What do I do to get out of it?
Yeah. So, and something very important is that is surround yourself with good people, and surround yourself with your family loves you. Hopefully, most of us, 95% of us, have family that or people, friends that care about you and love you.
Mhm.
Surround yourself with people that care about you, because a lot of times they'll be able to tell you that you're off course and you're not doing well. And you need to realize that the only reason that they're saying that is because they absolutely love you. And they have no skin in the game other than the fact that they absolutely love you and they want you to do well. And they want you to be involved with going to birthday parties and family outings and going to weddings and this and that and fun things and things that are bright and joyous. And it's okay to watch a funny movie, a comedy, even though you're feeling like you don't really want to laugh. So surrounding yourself with good people. And in my own case, my last day, my last time there involved me being overly angry at a computer malfunction that led to a piece of equipment that we use to draw blood, print labels malfunctioning. And everything just seemed to be malfunctioning, and including myself. And I ended up punching the computer screen at work, something that I had never done before. I had never, like, you can go to my house, there's no holes in the walls. It's like, it was very uncharacteristic. And so when that happened, I immediately went to the director, Miriam, and I said, boss, I just punched a computer screen. Can you please take it out of my paycheck? And she didn't even acknowledge it. She said, how's your hand? And I says, my hand's fine. She's like, how are you? And I just started to weep.
Mhm.
And I wasn't going to lie anymore. And I was like, I'm not good, boss. And she's like, she called in one of our EMS liaisons, Lee, and he drove me to my doctor. And if you're, and for those of you out there, if you work in a doctor office, and I know how busy those are, and you're sitting at the reception desk, when I walked up to her, she had a waiting room full of people that had actually had appointments. And she looked at me and I said, I don't have an appointment. My doctor is here. My name is Dennis Blocker. And I fear that I may not survive the night. And she said, I'll get you back right now, to her credit. So that's why I mention it, is no matter how busy you are, stay, like, care about your people. I'm so
Right.
thankful to her. I wish I knew her name, but I'm so thankful to her. And then that started me on. So I had great family, I had great leadership, and I had folks that cared, and they started me on the process of getting better. And what that looked like for me was, and I've never been a guy to depend on medications for things. I like to just handle things on my own. I don't want to be bound to meds and feeling weird and down and
Right.
impotent and all this other stuff. So, I try to avoid it. But then this being at the bottom there, I says, well, what I'm doing isn't working, obviously. And so let me get help. And my boss, fortunately, said, get help. So she made me go with Lee, who drove me to my doctor, because she wasn't buying my bullcrap that I was going to go eventually. And I walked to the doctor, and so they started me on one medication that would allow me to sleep because I was having nightmares continuously, and one medication that kept me from dreaming, and then another medication to kind of bring down the anxiety and distress that I was continuously feeling. So and then that combined with a CPT program, a cognitive processing therapy, where I was introduced to the concept of stuck points. And she had me write about the worst day of one of the worst experiences that was stuck in my brain, keyword. And she had me write a page about it. It ended up being 3 pages, and she went through it and had me highlight what I would later find out were stuck points, things that I believed about the incident that were based on emotion and not reality. An example of that was, if she had her seatbelt on, she would have survived. How do you know she would have survived, Dennis? How do you know that even if she had a seatbelt on, that she would have survived? How do you know that, for instance, she says, and I feel like this is going down the direction that you think life isn't fair, in which she said, who gave you the concept that life is fair? Life is unfeeling. It has no opinion at all about what happens to anybody. It just is. There's free will out there. So the drunk driver has free will to drive while drunk. The family has free will to not buckle up their daughter who has been crying and obnoxious, and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. So fine, just sit still. And combined together, you have this event that is not your fault, Dennis. And you absolutely, did you do everything you could have done to save her? Yes, absolutely. Okay, then what are you doing with this weight that's not, that this young girl didn't ask you to carry? The parents didn't ask you to carry that. Why are you carrying that? So that, Mike, that immediately I felt in this first couple sessions, I literally felt weight come off my shoulders, and things that I learned in that CPT therapy. And it just immediately, and that's why now I tell EMT and medics and nurses and docs, like, first thing off the bat is get a counselor. You don't even need them right now, but just get them lined up and just go once a month for a self-check. I mean, for God's sake, we would do quality control checks on our glucometers every morning. We would do quality control checks on our defibrillators every morning to make sure they were functioning properly for the shift. Why would we not do quality control checks on ourselves? It makes no sense at all.
Absolutely. You said so many amazing things there, and unfortunately we're so beyond time. But I want to just say one thing is, if that one event and you asking for help changed your life.
Absolutely.
And by you speaking about it changes how many other lives. It's not a ripple effect. It's a tsunami effect, So thank you for sharing that. And again, that one choice, the one choice you did, right? You just talked about it. You did it yourself. Punched the thing, but you also then went and told somebody and didn't just leave. And that lady is what also changed the game.
For sure.
Because she knew how to handle it and cared enough and didn't just brush it and not care. Brush it under the rug and, don't worry about it. Are you okay? And bye. Go ahead, take yourself, whatever the case may be. She followed through and did all the right things that kept you on that track. So kudos to her, and I hope she reaches out to you or reaches out to us and we'll connect you, or whatever the case may be. That would be fantastic. So with that said, we're just gonna go with the 3 final tips to help veterans and high achievers and their families, for that matter, get further faster. And maybe you can include you've already dropped some amazing tips. So maybe you can include some of the tips that, again, catapulted you into where you are now.
Yes. Swallow your pride. Don't be a martyr. Freaking get help, and don't be a martyr. Sometimes that sadness gets to be comfortable, and then people feel bad for you, and you like that show of sympathy that you get from being Eeyore all the time. And it's like, don't be a martyr. Get help. Get better.
Yeah, it's called secondary gain. Absolutely. I love the way you put that. Thank you.
Don't recluse. If you don't recluse, that's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. If you can imagine, you're sitting there recluse and there is a demon with his finger in your skull, just swirling it around in your brain with these thoughts, how you're not worth anything and your family would be better off without you, which is all freaking lies. Don't recluse. And realize that you're not alone. Even if you feel like you are, you're not. Yep. There are people that care about you. Even if maybe your mom and dad have passed, maybe you don't have siblings. I guarantee you, if you're a good human and you're worth your salt, there are people, coworkers, friends, people that you hang out with that really do care, that you can call and say, hey, I'm not doing good. I need to talk. And it could be the middle of the night and they'll be there for you.
Absolutely.
So don't recluse.
I love that as well, because here's, I'm just going to go a little further. That's where suicide comes from, guys. That's the slow path to suicide.
Right.
So take that step, create that support system, find your tribe, reach out to us, reach out to Dennis, whatever the case may be. Yes. You have people that care.
That's right.
Amen.
Yeah. And if you think opposite, it's a lie. It's not true.
It is. And then do you have a third for us?
Actually, that's kind of
So that works. Those are two great ones, man.
Fall inside, get help, don't recluse, and realize you're not alone. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you. Those are phenomenal tips. Can you give us, how do people reach out to you? And then we're going to just close up with what you're doing now with the cause.
Sure. I'm on Facebook with my name, Dennis Blocker. And also I've got my email for, I've got a website from my books that I've written. I only write nonfiction. And then I wrote about my experiences. There's a doctor up in California, Dr. Patricia Bay, who prescribes my book to her PTSD patients. The book is called Clear, and it's on Amazon. If you go to blockerbooks.com, you'll see the books there, and blockerbooks.com. And I'm on Facebook. I've got a great nonprofit World War II preservation that has nothing to do with what I guess kind of in a way it would, but
it's what you're doing now, man. It's brought you out of the light and you're doing something cool. So let's mention it.
Yeah, it's called Conservators of the Greatest Generation. And it's something that I developed with a buddy of mine who, over the past couple of decades, we interviewed hundreds of World War II veterans, and it gave us the idea for this nonprofit. And we preserve their stories and their histories. And it turns out 90% of Americans have a direct connection to a World War II veteran. So that's a great client pool to have 90% of the country.
Right.
Pretty few businesses like that. So that's pretty awesome. But
it's fantastic. I think it's important we mention that because it does connect with everything we do. So amen, sure. Man. Keep up the good work, Dennis. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Hard subjects, right? Mm-hmm. But they need to be talked about. The conversations need to happen so that people also understand how you find the light in them.
Yes, sir. It's
super important. So with that said, again, time is the most precious resource we have as human beings. We don't get it back. So very grateful that you're on today and sharing your story and some amazing tips and thoughts. So really appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate what you do.
All right. And we are. Thank you. And we are out of here.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful journey of Your Thoughts, Your Reality podcast with your host, Michael Cole. We hope the conversation sparked some thoughts that resonate with you. To dive deeper into empowering your thoughts and enhancing your reality, visit empowerperformancestrategies.com. Remember, your thoughts shape your reality, so make them count. Until next time, stay inspired and keep creating the reality you desire. Catch you on the next episode.